Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. Today, I'm back with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
Oh, it's going fine as long as I find out who stole my yard sign.
Oh yeah, well that's kind of funny. I guess that's always a big thing around political seasons. Some
Yeah, it
people
was,
get a little carried away with that,
yeah,
right?
a little less than 2 days, and my yard sign was stolen. So anyway, okay,
Yeah, well, that's our,
tis the
I'm sure you'll
season.
get another. Yeah. Well, you just never know. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Everybody can vote for whoever they want to, you
Sure,
know,
do it in the
and
ballot box though, not my front yard.
right. No, I get that. I get that. That is kind of funny. But all right. So today we're going to talk a little about Lucid. We're going to talk about a climate tech startup, a GM and Hyundai partnership,
Mhm.
Didi, which is a
Ride
um,
sharing, ride.
foreign rideshare company, and their plans for electric cars in Mexico.
Mhm.
A company called DJI that makes drones and a
Well,
problem
the
U.S. government.
yeah, the elephant in the room of drones. Yeah,
We're going
DJI.
to talk about a Guinness record on MPG.
Well, I don't know. I can't call Wayne a friend because we've crossed paths in the past, but I had to run that one because he has a new Guinness World Book of Records, and so we got to talk about that.
Nice. And let me see. Beijing telling its EV makers not to invest in a couple of countries, and
Hmm.
also some information on states that are best in the EV charging space. Now, I want to go ahead and start out with talking about the Lucid news, which isn't really anything super major here. But what do we got here? I'll share screen. Today I can share screen, so I might
All
as well
right.
do it. I shut down enough crap on my system. Um, you know, when I'm using Chrome, it tells you if you hover over the tab how much memory that thing is using.
Ah,
And our Reuters is the worst. Their their tabs use more than a gig of memory.
oh
I
my,
have nothing else I ever use because
interesting. Yeah,
Reuters has so many videos running on every
running.
page of ads.
Yeah, yeah,
I can't stop what it's doing. And that just really,
yeah,
even with 16 gigs of RAM, that's really putting a pull on my system
yeah,
when I have so many news articles open at the same
yeah.
time. But, anyways, Lucid's next EV will be much more affordable. After arrival of the Gravity, Lucid will set its sights on the aging but still dominant Tesla Model Y. So the Gravity is an SUV that's coming out,
Hmm.
and their plans are for 2026 to have a high volume, mid-size offering. They haven't given it a name yet, but just saying it's going to have a starting price under $50,000.
Which
If the
is about
first one,
half of what their cars, their
yeah,
full size Airs and things go for. Yeah,
or 20% of what their most expensive car costs. I mean,
yeah,
they've got a $250,000 car.
yeah.
Um, but it'll probably be similar as a crossover that'll be similar to the Gravity, but a smaller footprint. And it'll land in a busy segment that's been dominated by the Model Y for quite some time. And the argument is maybe the Model Y is getting to be a bit of a tired design.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, EV Maker has received two large cash infusions from its main financial backer earlier this year. Well, that's a big surprise with Lucid
Well,
when the Saudis
who
already
might
own 60
that
something
be?
percent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but it should have a 300-mile range. And for now, Lucid is calling it a mid-size platform. It will seat 5 passengers in 2 rows instead of the Gravity's 7. The profile view of the planned model does not reveal much room behind the C-pillar. Well, that's not a whole lot of news, but the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund has put 2 large investments. We know that the Saudis are not going to let anything happen to Lucid. It's their pet project. They're doing lots of cool stuff in the kingdom, and you know
Yeah.
I think Lucid's a really safe bet, and its stock is certainly it's gone up like 50% in the last 3 months. So that's not saying a lot when you compare that's if it's around $5 and it used to be
Yeah.
80 or
Yeah.
60 or something like that.
Yeah.
But from going from 3.5 to 5 is still a pretty big jump.
Yeah. It's sort of done a social.
Right. All right. So
All
next,
right.
I'm gonna go ahead and get the Reuters article out of the way so I can free up some system
There you go. All
memory.
right.
All right. So, and everybody knows I talk about this all the time. I'm always suspicious of Reuters articles, but they do publish a lot of stuff in our space. So, they've always got something in the sustainability space, and somebody's always got a bone to grind with somebody when it comes to Reuters. It's never unbiased news by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. It's an
I've gotten to
opinion.
the point where I just look for it with Reuters.
Yeah. Opinion piece.
So,
Yeah.
so here is the title: Climate tech startup Mantel to use molten salt to capture factory flue CO2 with $30 million in funding from Shell and venture capital companies. Now, it's interesting it's molten salt because we've seen molten salt used for nuclear reactors, right?
Yep.
But we're using it differently here. It can capture the molten salt technology can capture emissions inside kilns, boilers, and furnaces. And it's a step change in lowering costs for Shell. Shell and another oil company named ENI have led an early stage funding round for this climate tech startup, Mantel Capture, which will use the molten salts to capture carbon dioxide emissions at refineries, factories, and other industrial sites. Capturing the carbon where it's produced or point source allows polluters to reduce emissions and retain existing expensive infrastructure, although it's been criticized for perpetuating emissions. Boston-based Mantel aims to put 95% of the carbon out of smokestack emissions using the molten salt. So that's a pretty big, if they can pull out 95%, that's a pretty big deal. A process that says is unusually cost effective because it takes advantage of the extremely hot environments inside industrial furnaces and boilers, requiring much less additional energy than rival capture methods. This tech could radically change the energy industry, but there's still risk to what we're doing. Well, let's see what that risk is,
Yeah.
if it identifies that. At a scale of hundreds of thousands to millions of tons, Mantel could theoretically capture carbon at about $30 to $50 a ton, making it economically viable in many countries offering either incentives for carbon capture or taxing emissions, and far below competing systems. I think the most carbon capture has been in the 150 to 200 a ton.
Yeah, I have to ask, and I always have to ask this: you capture it, what do you do with it? Right. So basically, I mean, I tend to, okay, we need to do this because we're still spewing the stuff into the air. But after you've captured it, what do you do with it? Right.
Well, wouldn't it be captured into the molten salt?
Well, that I don't know. Again, an article, does it explain?
No, it does
Do you
not.
have,
It does not.
yeah, I'm assuming that it probably captured and there's some way that they extract. I mean, okay, fine. You've got Shell and others, investing. What happens to it afterwards? Does it get
Well, then you take the molten salt when it's cooled down, you add it to cattle food, you give it to the cattle, and then they fart it back out.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
That obviously does nothing to remove what's already there in the atmosphere, right? So okay, fine. So all we're doing is giving them permission to keep pumping the stuff out of the ground or digging it up and burning it. It doesn't do anything to reverse the problem. It only slows the problem down a little bit. So I'm a bit, but then
I don't know. It did not get into where the carbon eventually goes, other than it's keeping it from going into the air. So I assume it's somehow trapped into.
Put it in a pipeline and send it up out to the Bakken oil field or out into the Texas oil fields and use it to push more oil, natural gas up out of the ground. So I don't know.
I'm sure there's something to it. Like I said before, the fact that Shell was part of it when we'd done that previous story about Shell putting in all those chargers at
Yeah.
10,000 places, and then all of a sudden a bunch of those chargers ended up on the surplus market because I've got I'm trying to sell some at
Yes.
a
So
super
if
cheap
you're in the
deal.
market, guys, give my associate here a call, and he can probably get you some good deals on some
Yeah, I have
EV
access to
chargers. So
superchargers under $25,000,
yeah,
and it would cost you at least $65,000 to manufacture a level 3 DC supercharger.
yeah,
So it's something to
the
you
deal.
know keep in mind. Um, Anyways, let's move on to the GM and Hyundai agree to explore collaboration on vehicles and
Ah,
manufacturing to reduce capital spending. Now, it makes a lot of sense. Now, this isn't a consolidation play,
no,
but it is interesting to see that they're doing this. So, Hyundai and Kia and Genesis, which are all part of the Hyundai family, are making
right.
money on EVs. GM is not.
Yep.
And maybe GM can learn something from Hyundai. Who knows what that might be? Because
And maybe they could improve their styling.
yeah, maybe that's
You
a big
know,
part of it. The Hyundai ones look
yeah,
nice,
yeah.
and the
Yep.
Kia.
Yep, they've done an incredible job. So what they've got here is they have technically a memorandum of understanding, which is not a firm commitment. It's just, hey, we're going to get together, groups of engineers and our marketing people, and we're going to try to figure out, are there areas where can we cooperate? And this isn't limited to just EVs. They have it also involves fuel cell technology, possible uses of hydrogen. There was a third one in there. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's sort of a general agreement to see if there are areas that we can help reduce each other's costs. So where it goes, so this is not this is the first time for Hyundai as a group to do a deal like this with another major automobile OEM. It is not the first time for GM. GM has had deals like this in the past. Particularly, they've had it with Honda in exploring fuel cell technology. So let's see where it goes. Good if you guys can improve the technology and reduce the cost. Man, all the more power to you.
Well, let's see. So a couple of things. They're talking about potential areas of interest. So this isn't all about EVs. It's
No,
actually
no,
about
no.
all cars in general because it's
Yep,
talking about passenger and commercial vehicles, internal combustion engines, and
yep,
electric and hydrogen technologies. Now,
yep.
I've not really seen a lot with either of these companies doing much with hydrogen, but that doesn't mean that
Uh,
they're not.
No, Hyundai's has been involved not quite as long as General Motors, but they've been involved. Not that they've been making the cars available for lease. They mainly have been used for research and technology demonstration projects. So I don't think that there are many people that can go out to their local Hyundai dealer and order up a fuel cell Tucson. It just
Right. No, I understand. Let's see. Um, there's any other news for this. Co-development and production of passenger and commercial vehicles. That really seems to be the main piece. They really don't give any kinds of breakdown into anything.
no, it's
Mary
all
Barra says it's prime time for industry collaboration to share in capital spending.
yep.
I just like to see some of these do something with somebody like Canoe. Oh, I don't know if you watched our episode from yesterday.
I have.
I was really
It's our
laying
program, and
into
I haven't.
Mullen.
I'll post it a little bit later this afternoon. So
Yeah, I mean, I've invited people to give me the good and the bad about Mullen, and I'm waiting for more,
feedback. Yeah.
feedback because man, the CEO posted something on LinkedIn, and nobody was supportive of his
Ouch.
posts, and they've actually had good news. That's the weird thing is so in the market, they took a big order from a company in the UAE for like 230 million, and they got a few million advanced. They're going to be able to fill that order, but at the same time, they are doing their like fourth reverse split in 18 months. Some guy
Wow.
was saying his $97,000 investment is now worth $1.72.
Oh crap! Ouch.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
I
shouldn't
mean,
feel too bad about mine. Then you're saying?
yeah. I mean, can you imagine? There was a couple people like that, and I'm just like, holy crap! I
No.
mean, that is just. I look at. I think Mullen in the EV space, if they were not out here doing this crap in the public markets. I mean, it looks like they're doing good things in the EV space and they're on a good course, but they're screwing over shareholders. Oh my God. And it really, um, they should have just asked for donations. They would have been better off just
Yeah, just
having
just
asked for donations, you know.
just do an online fundraiser.
Right, right. And I don't know.
Sell cakes and cookies and annotated Bibles and gold tennis shoes.
Right. I just don't know what to make of the whole thing. Anyways, next we're going to talk about a rideshare company. Now,
Mhm.
Chinese ride-hailing company Didi, which is in a number of markets. It's not
Oh yeah,
just
yeah. It's not
in
just China.
China,
Yeah.
but it's not one that's in the United States. Wants to bring a total of 100,000 electric cars to Mexico by
Yeah.
2030 and is investing 50.3 million US dollars to do so. That's not a big number compared to 100,000. That's like $5,000 cars. I mean, that's not.
Well, there are cars in electric cars in China you could buy for almost that. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's not a crazy number. The goal is to build the largest fleet of electric cars in Mexico and Latin America.
Now, the one
And
thing that I found interesting about this article was the fact that it doesn't. I mean, they refer to, for example, a BYD D1, and there's another couple of companies. That's it right there, the BYD, which is designed. You notice that with the sliding door, so it's almost kind of like a van
yeah,
for pickup. But what it doesn't specifically say is, are these cars going to be manned or are they going to be autonomous? It says they say later in the article that they're doing some work with a couple of companies, that sound like they're doing autonomous, ride sharing development work, but it wasn't really clear on that. So
why? Why? I mean, you can pay people, the drive, people will drive down there for almost nothing. It doesn't make any
oh yeah,
sense. The autonomous part doesn't even make economic sense in
yeah.
that part of the world.
So yeah, so that was what was not. That was the one thing that kind of 100,000 cars, which would be a really big fleet, but are those driven by human beings or are those driven by some autonomous robot system? And how's that going to go over in Mexico? I
Well,
don't know.
listen to this. So in 23 in Mexico, just shy of 9,300 electric cars and plug-in hybrids were sold in Mexico. So
Mm-hmm.
far this year, there are over 19,000 so far for the year in Mexico.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big jump. It's not yet known which electric car models Didi plans to use in Mexico. The ride-hailing service provider has several partnerships with Chinese car manufacturer, the BYD D1,
All right.
the GAC Ion, the Mona MO3 Saloon, and also which is part of a collaboration with Xpeng.
Yeah. So
Let me see.
not much more after that, I don't think, if I recall correctly. So
57% of the kilometers driven by Didi drivers in China
in
are
China,
with electric.
yep. And of course, that's obviously far more affordable.
Yeah, and
Given
reducing
the connection
CO2.
between Pemex, which is the Mexican oil company, which is I think is a national company. How does Pemex feel about that? Having all those cars there, that'll be an interesting thing to watch politically within Mexico.
No, I'm sure. So, Bill, I didn't get a chance to look at anything about this, but we have an article, a brand called DJI, which
Oh
makes drones.
yes, this one I can talk about. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, there is a bill to ban them,
Mm.
passes the House and is headed to the Senate. Now, is this a foreign brand?
Okay, DJI is the world leader
Hmm.
in drone technology. Now,
Okay.
typically, for you first, most people, if they've been involved, they'll know that DJI makes the little sort of hobbyist, quasi commercial, drones for shooting, shooting news stories, and hobbyists like me go out and fly in our backyard. And I used mine to examine my roof after I got my new roof put on, things like that. But they also make agricultural drones. And I had a chance to see one a couple of weekends ago, actually, a couple of them. So we got two dealers actually here in the eastern Nebraska, western Iowa area who specialize in that. And these are DJI commercial scale, big drones, right? I mean, they're not
Okay.
aircraft size, but they're big enough to carry 100, 200 pounds of seed corn or for liquid fertilizer or whatever. And so what they're talking about here is there's this group within Congress who are afraid of everything Chinese.
Mhm.
They're gonna everything they do to spy us. And believe me, there is justification for that, right? I mean, there was a
Right.
lady who worked just recently got convicted working within the state of New York, the government of New York, who's been spying for the Chinese government for like a decade, that kind of. So yeah, that goes on. It is a concern. So what they're talking about doing basically is saying if you own a DJI drone, and I don't know whether it's being grandfathered back or apply, or applies to anything they build going forward. But if you have a DJI drone, you will not be able to use American, U.S. owned airwaves to operate that drone. So basically, it means you can't fly the thing,
Wow.
because
Yeah, that'd
because
be a huge deal.
yeah, be a huge deal. And this would involve, potentially, I don't know, they've probably got millions of those little hobbyist drones like mine. Mine is not a DJI, but it's similar. So I wouldn't surprise me if they come along and say you can't fly it either. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, to operate a drone in the United States and to do anything off your own property requires basically the equivalent of a private pilot's flying license. In fact, in some respects, it's even harder to get and more expensive because I have to go down and take a written test, and it's going to cost me 160, 200 bucks to take that test. And it is a tough test. I have a private pilot's license that I got 50 years ago. Oh God, has it been that long? 40 years ago. and it was nowhere. The written test was nowhere as tough as what I've seen in studying to get my commercial drone license. So it's not easy. And the people that are rated to fly those drones have gone through a great deal of training, and it must be continually updated. And in addition to that, all drones above, I think it's 255 grams, something like that, all have to now have transponders on them. You can't fly it. And there are areas that are restricted where you can't fly them, right? You can't fly them. Obviously, I can't go over to Offutt Air Base and fly
Right.
my drone off over the airbase, right?
Hmm.
Ain't going to happen, right? I'm going to get my proverbial derriere handed to me by the FAA and probably the FBI and a bunch of other agencies. So no,
Yeah.
you can't do that. So they're very highly restricted. Now, I don't know whether these guys, ladies, are aware of the fact of how controlled the operation of drones is from a little tiny. I mean, where's mine? Mine's upstairs. So I can't go get it. But from a little tiny drone, I don't have the same restrictions, but I can't go where a commercial drone is, and I can't videotape things. I can't go over a parade and film a parade. It's just I can't film from a car. There's just all kinds of things that are restrictions to it. So I'm not sure what this law is meant to accomplish, other than maybe it will encourage entrepreneurs and startups in the United States to begin to build their own drones so that we don't have to depend on Chinese technology. Maybe that's what the impetus of this is.
Do, Now, I know that Northrop Grumman makes drones, but theirs are on some of those drones are size of a
Uh, they're,
737. Okay,
yeah, they're huge.
but
The
yeah,
Predator drones and all those. Yeah, no. Those.
but
That's
is
different.
there anybody making drones that you're aware of in the United States for private use?
There may be, but the elephant in the room is DJI. They're the go-to guys. Um, I'm sure there are probably some. I would imagine probably using parts they can acquire from Korea or wherever. But I think that's and again I'm saying I'm not. It's not that we shouldn't be concerned about Chinese surveillance because
Hmm.
we've arrested and convicted people for that. As a matter of fact, I think there was just a guy that worked for the CIA for 20 years who was just recently convicted of spying for the Chinese. So it is a concern.
Well,
But
I think some of it, there's so many Chinese students that come to the United States. People wouldn't consider a lot of what they do as necessarily spying, but they, probably return research papers and
they can
other
go
things
back
back.
home, and they're incentivized to come back, and you can probably live a little bit. We'll give you a big salary, and you can have you know, uh, we can incentivize you, or they can send their secret police force, which we know exists here in the country,
Here in the
here in the United
U.S., yeah,
States, in the U.S., and encourage you because we're going to, make life difficult for your grandmother and your grandfather.
right.
So that's it's a concern. It's something we ought to be aware of. I'm not trying to minimize that, but if it encourages U.S. entrepreneurs to get off the stick. Well, speaking of U.S. drones, yes, as a matter of fact, AeroVironment, the company that built the Sun Racer in
Mhm.
the late 1980s, that eventually led to the development of the EV1 electric car. That's their big thing. They made one of the very early killer drones for the Ukrainian army.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so there are companies doing that, but whether there are companies that are building drones that I can the guy that I taught, Mark, and his wife who operate a ag drone business, whether they can come up with an alternative to that, I don't know. I guess I'll have
Yeah.
to
So
ask
what
them
is
when I
this?
see
It's
them.
called the Countering CCP Drones Act,
Yeah,
and it contains a provision to provide short-term grant programs for first responders to at least replace their
yeah.
DJI drones.
Oh,
Because the brand could have significant negative impacts on public safety in the U.S. due to how many um, police forces actually use
hmm,
that brand.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
DJI has long denied the dangers of its
yeah.
drones in the U.S., calling the bill's claims inaccurate. DJI drones do not collect flight logs, photos, or videos by default. We're not a military company. We remain one of the few drone companies to clearly denounce and actively discourage use of our drones in combat. Yeah, well, I'm sure they're being used for that
Well, yeah.
a lot more than what they'd like.
Well,
But
so what happens after we finally get some resolution to the Ukrainian conflict that is favorable to the Ukrainian people and not to Putin's regime? And
mhm.
who knows when that's going to happen? But believe me, have they developed skills in the area of drone technology? That is going to be a mini boom area for them, I'm sure. So I would look for that, coming out,
Oh, I watched a
whenever.
video on Ukrainians using 3D printers and
Mhm.
sitting there, and they were making drones using 3D
Oh
printers
yeah,
and all the things they were doing to be able to make something viable for them to be able to use it in
yeah.
combat. And,
Probably the plastic made from recycled plastic bottles, right? They take
yep.
it and they grind it up and they melt it and extrude it to get the wire, and then they turn it into the body of a drone to carry a hand grenade over a trench somewhere. So yeah,
it's crazy some of the stuff. I've seen them, the drones spreading thermite, made it look like it had a flamethrower on it.
yeah.
I've seen them now where they had some kind of AK rifle attached to it, and they were able to take it and fly it and shoot it at targets.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, you know, they were able to attack Moscow this week.
Yeah, yep.
With drones. So
It's crazy what they're, and those are some long range drones. You know, when you and I are usually thinking about drones, we're thinking about one that can't get too far away from us, right?
Mine. Mine can't fly out. I cannot fly it out of eyesight. I mean, it's so small that isn't very far, and it'll operate for about 20 minutes, and then I have to bring it back and put a new battery in it. So then the gentleman that does Mark, who does the ag drones here in Nebraska and Iowa, he says his runs for about the same length of time. He can cover about 5 acres with his. So what the Ukrainians are doing to get 1,000-kilometer range out of their drones, wow, yeah.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I'm sure they're not flying that fast either, so that's probably a very long drone trip for the operator to watch.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on. Our next story is a Guinness Book of World Records with a Toyota Prius. So a Prius just drove across America, averaging just over 93 miles per gallon, which was a Guinness World Record, for driving across the country. And this is kind of unique, and because it also gives what the records were in previous years. There's the car here,
and Wayne.
Now, the only thing this article did not tell us about was what his average speed was. I'd be really curious what the average speed was.
I have reached out to Wayne, whom I've known for 20 years, to come on the show and hopefully tell us how he does that. He has been doing this since 2004 in the early Priuses, and we would be invited. He and I and other journalists would be invited to Toyota, media events. And one of those media events was a hypermiling thing, because he had already garnered attention back in 2004 by driving a Prius. I think most of us were getting somewhere around 40, 50 miles per gallon. He was getting 60 and 80 or something like that. And how the hell do you do that? Pardon my French. How do you do this, Wayne? He would never he would never reveal his secrets to how he would manage to get that kind of mileage. And now, of course, he's got this latest model Toyota, which is probably the prettiest Toyota Prius they've ever designed.
Well,
I love it.
Saying here, Gertis kicked off things in LA, drove to Lakewood, California, then to Flagstaff, and then went to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, to Amarillo, and where he finally had to stop for fuel.
Where he had to fuel up. Yep.
Wow.
Now, if you've ever driven that is not a long trip on level ground. You're climbing mountains up to Flagstaff. And of course, then you're going back down into the Amarillo area. But that's not, I've driven it. That's not an easy, trip to make in any kind of a vehicle. And he managed, what was that, over 100 miles per gallon?
106.3 miles per gallon for
Wayne,
that first.
How do you do this?
Yeah. But then his next leg took him to Russell, Arkansas, and it slashed the figure to just over 98 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
Fuel economy further fell on the leg to Knoxville, Tennessee, with a cumulative average of 94.0 miles per gallon.
Yeah, well, you're from Tennessee. You've lived in Tennessee. That's all rolling country. That's not just.
It is.
That's not driving along the Platte River in Nebraska.
Yeah, that's about on normal highway speeds. That Russell, Arkansas to Knoxville is probably about a 9 to 10 hour drive. I bet he managed to do it in an extra 3. I'm sure he was trying to go at like 55 miles per hour or something
Yeah.
like that. So it was super fuel efficient. The trip from Knoxville to Winston-Salem was at 94.9. And then they
That's
drove to New York City,
that's
followed
over
by a
mountain.
fuel stop in New Jersey with a total trip average of 93.158. It's interesting how the further we went east, it kept going down.
Yeah.
He had done an exploratory drive where he averaged 68.1 miles per hour, but he only managed 58.1 miles per gallon, which is still good fuel economy.
Oh yeah.
But when you're talking 93, you're starting to talk about, hey, who needs electric cars?
Yeah, but that is open highway
No,
consistent
I
driving,
know.
not stop and go. I mean,
I'm
my
just
my my
kidding.
little Honda Insight, I drove it to Detroit and back, and I've also driven it up to the Black Hills and back, and I was averaging around 60 miles per gallon in the my little Insight. So, I mean, it's doable, but oh, yeah, it's just remarkable what he does. Wayne, congratulations, man! You still continue to impress me 20 years later.
Yeah, and um, I also saw stats so on what the previous record was. So he held the previous record from 2016. Um, well, 2016 in a 2017 Kia Niro HEV or hybrid. It was 76.55 miles per
Yeah,
gallon, and that was 8 years earlier. And then in 2013, Kyle Morris and Connor Morris and a 2006 Honda Insight got
yeah,
74.3 miles per gallon.
yeah. That's what I had.
Yeah, so it's slowly been increasing on the tech there. It's a challenge to keep expanding that.
You have to really be disciplined to drive the way he drives. Because most
Yes,
of us get on the thing and we're going to try to keep up with traffic, and generally that traffic moving 5, 10, 15 miles an hour faster than what the speed limit is set at, right? I mean,
right.
that's just the reality of, driving in America. So, and then again, that's not even the Autobahn. Wow. You know, so yeah, it's a congratulations. I think that's great. You deserve that Guinness Book of Records, Wayne.
All right. So next, Beijing urges Chinese EV makers to avoid investments in countries like India and Turkey. Did you look at this article at
Yeah,
all?
yeah, I did.
So
What there's
what is
actually
their
there's
reasoning?
yeah, there's well the reasoning primary. Well, let's take India for example. India is probably the easiest example to talk about. In the case of India, China and India have had a long-standing border dispute over to that region in Tibet, right? And so there's not good feeling. And in addition to that, one of the companies, and I can't remember the name right offhand, but one of the Chinese companies has been trying to build cars in India for quite a few years and just hasn't had a lot of luck. If you know anything about the Indian bureaucracy, it is a difficult one to navigate. I mean, look, Tesla's been trying to go there and they haven't figured out how to break in there yet. It's a tough market to be in, and I think that's part of it. Regarding they also mentioned in there they not really excited about them going up and setting up taking over factories in Russia and building cars there, because it's just simply the economic uncertainty. And I think that's probably the same case in with Turkey. And there's also the concern of industrial espionage. If you go in there and you teach people how to build cars as efficiently as you build them in Shanghai or
Mhm.
Guangzhou or wherever, that employees can walk out with that technology and end up, you end up being used to on because Turkey builds their own cars and they've been trying to build and produce an electric car now for 10 years. So that I think that could. Europe, of course, they still haven't figured out what they're doing there. They're still talking about their feet. There's kick. What's the word I want here? There's pushback on this whole tariff thing, and now they're asking the automakers are asking the Parliament, the European Commission, to well, let's not be so hard on the Chinese. So that's not been resolved. I think it should be. I think a decision is coming down here fairly soon on what's going on with the tariffs there. So
Well,
it's
there's
just
a lot of pressure because China says if they start putting big tariffs on their EVs, they're
we'll
going to
just
put big tariffs on European alcohol coming into China.
exactly. So that ship we talked about last time probably won't be sailing around the Horn
Yeah.
delivering champagne and cognac and wine to the ports of Shanghai, right? So
Yeah, well, it's funny that they're accusing them of, maybe they'll do industrial espionage and steal their trade secrets if they're building in those countries. And it's like, but
yeah.
that's how China's built up everything, is stealing other people's
Well, that's
technology.
exactly. I mean, that. Why do you think they let Tesla in there? Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was part of it. Even
Yeah.
though, Musk is very open source about all of his stuff. Hey, if
Or
you want to learn how, we'll tell you how we make the
or
electric
or
cars.
or says he is. I don't know how many sets that is translated into actual product, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm just saying. But well, he says that it's great, even if you know how getting into production isn't easy. Doesn't mean
yeah,
it's going to be simple.
nope, absolutely. What else is that? It have we got
We've
them?
got one more story today.
All right,
All right. So, what's the best state for electric vehicles on World EV Day? New index ranks every state.
and
This is
guess where this state is, where you and I are sitting.
we're in a pretty color. So let me scroll down to that. Where's
At
our
the
map?
bottom
All
of
right.
the list.
Yeah, we're in a dark
Yeah,
place
we're at the
apparently.
bottom of the
So
list.
the this is based on EV charging infrastructure, but what's a little unfair here? So we'll highlight over Nebraska. Says average charging points per mile of road, 2.9. I'm not sure. I would have thought it would have been miles per charging point, not the other way around. I mean, you think about it, we have a lot of roads here, but not a lot of people. So
Mhm.
it's not like there's a crazy amount of people. Whereas we look over here at California, they have 24 charging points per mile of road versus our 2.9. So they're about 10 times what we are, eight or
Yeah,
nine, 8 to
they've
10
got
times.
what they what 35 million people, 40 million people in California, and we have, mm,
1.8.
well, yeah, I thought it was closer to two, but whatever.
We're
Yeah,
we're getting there.
we're we're
Um,
we're the population of what
yeah, but
Hollywood.
their average charger
Well,
power is 10.3 and ours is 19.6. We're almost double their charger power. But
yeah,
yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, you look here at the top 10 states that it says are the best charger equipped. They're all on the coast. Well, that's also where the most EV adoption is too. So that makes a lot of sense.
yep,
Whereas if you look at
absolutely.
the ones that ranks as the lowest, it's all of our good old, Midwestern
Good
states
old
and
Midwest. Yeah,
some Western states. Yeah, I don't know that this is anything really jaw dropping. It's just I would have thought Florida ranked 21. I
yeah.
would have thought that they would have ranked probably a little bit higher because there seems to be a lot of EVs when you go to Florida. But um, the top one was Delaware.
Yeah,
Delaware had was it 20.6 charging points per mile. Average charging power is 22 and a half, which is more than
yeah,
Nebraska.
yeah.
EV market share was 22.1. EV fleet per charging point 14.2. What was our EV market share? It says ours was 22.5. I have a hard time believing it was that high. I guess you just never know. I mean, Nevada was only 13.2.
Hey,
California was 25.
I had to make a trip over to Bellevue, which you of course I will know it's about 7 miles to the west of us here, and within 1 mile of the Highway 370 and 72nd Street intersection
Hmm.
were 4 Teslas. I counted within that 1 mile coming up to that traffic light. Oh, this is really it's almost becoming like if you've been to Seattle, they're everywhere, right? You can't go anywhere in Seattle without seeing a whole bunch of Prius or sorry, Teslas.
Right.
And I thought this is almost wow, 4 of them within a mile. This is almost like Seattle. Well, not really, but
Yeah, but it is interesting to see this combined. I would have. I'm surprised that Washington State wasn't one of the top 15. Considering the EV
no,
adoption up
it's yeah,
there.
but it's much of it's still pretty, is a pretty rural area. Once you get east of the Cascades, it's pretty wide open country, all the way across almost to Minneapolis.
But California is that way too. Outside of the big cities, it's pretty rural. I mean, it's a big state.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know
but
what amount of the people live rurally, but it's still
yeah, but it's
a
when you drive up the Central Valley, there's just one town after another town after another town, small
right.
town there. So it's not unless you get what am I looking Palms, Palm Desert and some of those areas, you get um, fewer people per square mile. So whereas
Yeah.
here, Nebraska, once you get past Lincoln, York, it starts to thin out pretty quickly.
Yeah, Delaware was number one with amount of charging points per mile of road with 43.1. That's a lot of charging points for every mile of road.
Yeah.
But it's a small state, right? Geographically.
Yeah.
Let me see. The least was 9.3, which was Alaska and Arkansas.
And well, Arkansas, I'm not sure there. Alaska makes, there aren't a lot of roads, and the weather up there is not necessarily conducive to operating an EV. So I can
No, I
understand
get
that.
that. Anyways, that was all we had for today,
Okay.
Bill.
All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground.
No, we did. We
And
did.
if you guys want to, keep up with the latest of what's going on, start using that RSS stream of ours. There's, I post 50, 60, I think yesterday was 172 stories, something like that.
Wow.
And that literally only scratches the surface. There's so much that's out there, that's, stories that are developing and things that we try to cover. So if you want the latest, come to EV World. We're trying our best to keep you informed and
All right.
and entertain. So.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for watching. And when you watch this later on, please be sure to leave us a comment. Let us know if there's anything you'd like to see us covering.
Yeah,
Anyways,
definitely.
we'll be back next